PANDORUM is one of the first producers that got me to like TEAROUT or really heavy music back in the days, and I've been challenged to make a track similar to his style, so that's what we're going to be looking at today. Before we start, I have to say that this guy is a genius at what he does and has his very own style that's going to be very hard to replicate, so I'm going to use one of my favorite tracks of him as a reference. As always, this project file will be available on my Patreon, so make sure you check it out. And last thing before we start, I finally fixed the Discord, so if you guys want to join us, feel free to do so, all the links are in the description. So the first thing I'll do is write the intro melody. To do that, I'm going to use a synth preset in Serum, and I'll keep the melody very simple, mostly using pedal notes on D sharp and just adding some sort of suspenseful melody on the higher octave. Then I want to start building tension, so I'm going to make an easy bass line with 2 detuned saw waves, and I'm going to play a D sharp all the way through. On top of this, I'm going to add some sort of arp that'll repeat the same 4 notes over and over, and to make this sound, I'm just going to use some basic shapes with a bit of chorus effect to make it sound a bit more detuned. And finally, I'm gonna add a big stadium clap from the Kashmir packs and a couple of impacts and war horns at the beginning of each section. For the build-up, I'm gonna keep the stadium claps, the D sharp bass line, and the arp sound that I made earlier. I'm gonna make the arp sound just play a steady D sharp on a high octave on every beat, kinda like an alarm, and I'm gonna add a bunch of effects rising up along with a filtered snare speeding up on a triplet grid. Now for the drop, let's start by laying down some drums first. I'll make a basic kick and snare pattern, and I'll add a crash cymbal on each of them and no hi-hats in between. And just to add a bit more tonality, I'm gonna find a perk sample and layer it on the snare. Now for the basses, I think I'm gonna need 2 different basses in this drop, one for the first hit coming every 2 bars and one for the rest in between. So for the first one, I'm gonna use one of the spectral wavetables. I'll FM it by a sine wave and just add some distortion and compression to it. Then using the first LFO, I'll add some movement to the wavetable position and the FM amount. And using another LFO, I'm gonna control the mix of the reverb filter just so it only comes up at the end of the note. Then for the second bass, I'm gonna copy the first one, I'll change both wavetables, add some unison to oscillator B, and I'm gonna make some changes to the LFO shape so that the reverb filter is more present in the overall sound. Then I need to add some eerie layers on top of that, so the best way I can think of doing this is using a granulizer. I'll be using the one from the Reason Rack plugin, and I'll put one of my samples in it and start messing around with the speed, grain length, and grain spacing until I get something I like. And then I'll make a few variations just to alternate between them when I need to. Now I want to add one more layer, and that's going to be a gun bass, so I won't go in too much details for this simply because you can watch some of my previous videos to see how I make those gun sounds. And with this, I'm going to make a triplet riddim pattern, very typical of PANDORUM style and TEAROUT in general, and I'll add variations to this sound using a frequency shifter. Now the last thing I want to do is add a more melodic section to this drop, so I'm gonna do this real quick using all the sounds I already have, and I'm just gonna add some more vocally layers to that using the Labs library from Spitfire Audio. And just like that, I think we did most of the job. I'm just gonna rearrange and mix everything a bit better, and I think we can call it a day. Now, before we get into the final result, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of the future videos. Join us on Discord, and with that said, let's hear the final result.